Hello and welcome to Rolling with Two. I'm Will, and with me as always is the pursuer of joy herself,
Sarah.
And today we're doing a two-player perspective and accessibility for Pursuit of Happiness. Sarah, tell us a bit about this game.
All right. The Pursuit of Happiness is a game in which you start in your teen years and live through old age. Using a worker placement mechanism with time as your workers, you take on projects, get jobs, buy items, establish relationships, and raise families. The player with the most long-term happiness at the end of the game wins. All right, well, so how does the game change for two players?
So, first off, there is no bot.
No.
However, you may be in a relationship with a nanoman. Otherwise, the only change would be if you have the original version of the Pursuit of Happiness game. Now, we backed it all the way back when it first hit Kickstarter.
So we do.
In that version, you draw fewer cards for a two-player game.
Mm-hmm.
In the 2022 rule set, they took that away, and honestly,
it's a good thing.
It's a better game for it because you need to see more cards and have more choice, and it just doesn't make any sense why you would restrict that.
Right.
Also, there is just a little bit of confusion with the boards. We'll talk about that later. But mainly, that's the only rule change is the original version. So if you're seeing their special change for a two-player, you have the old rule set. Artipia does have the current rules on its website.
Yeah, on the website. Download that. You'll be happier for it. And that's the point of the game, right? Pursuing happiness.
Yes.
All right. So issues at a two-player game, and there really aren't that many. The main thing is group projects. As the name implies, it's meant to be worked on by multiple players, and you only have two players when you're playing a two-player game. So they're just less useful. You still might do them.
Yeah.
It's just you're going to get more out of them if there were more people playing the game.
I think like out of the last 5 or 6 games we played, I think one of us might have worked on a group project together.
It's just the benefits are not multiplied, but there are more benefits when more of the roles in the group are filled.
Yes.
And that's hard to do at a two-player count. That's what it is. So that's the only thing. But what it does well is, you're more likely to get the card you want because your turn, you draft a card, it gets refilled. Your opponent takes a turn, takes a card, it gets refilled, and then it's your turn again. So the card rows are not going to move that quickly, so you can plan potentially a little bit ahead.
Yeah, and given the fact that in the base game, there are 4 rows of cards.
Right.
And 4 cards in each row, 1 card getting taken out of 16 means a lot sticking around.
Right.
However, at the end of the round, all of those get cleaned off.
Right.
So it's not like you're going to be stuck always seeing the same cards.
Yeah, it's a very good balance because we've complained about how the card rows usually do not turn over frequently enough, or maybe there's been a few games
stagnate.
They get stagnate.
Yeah.
This game does not, but you have time usually to get something you want before it all goes away.
Yeah.
So yes. Okay, that's everything for two-player. For accessibility, as Will was hinting at, if you have the original rules and the original board, because that's the main problem, we still have the original board, the stress track is very confusing because the way they tackled it is you start with a certain number of time tokens, which are your workers.
6.
And then depending on if you move down, which is more stress, you would lose tokens, so it just had like a -1, a -2. And then if you went up the track, because you gained health, then you would add. But it was sometimes very confusing because you're like, well, how many did I start with in the first place?
It never said 6 in the middle.
No, it never says it on the board. So if you're in mid-game, then it's like, well, I have to look at the rules.
Yeah, and the only reference in the rules is you start with 6 at the start of the game.
Right.
And you're like, well, does that mean I start with that every round?
Right.
It didn't say that.
Exactly.
They cleaned that up in future printings.
Yeah, I kind of wish we could get a new board.
Yeah. In fact, it doesn't even have you do math. It just says 6, 7, 8, 9 up, or 6, 5, 4, 3 down.
Which it should have done from the beginning. Depending on how we do this, I might take a Sharpie to it and write over it or something. I don't know. We'll see. I kind of wish we had been able to get a new one. But anyways, so that is probably the most frustrating part if you get the original edition. If you have anything after and it has the numbers like Will says from like, it doesn't go all the way down to 2, does it?
No, it goes down to 3.
3 through whatever, then you're fine.
3 through 9.
3 through 9, then you're fine. You've got the revised edition. The other frustrating part that's really overdone, and we know how this can be overdone, there's so many different card types, and every single card type has a different name on how to activate it, but it's essentially the same thing.
Yeah, you do a card action to do something on a card, whatever it is, and then you move your marker over to the time spent area.
Right.
This game likes to call those actions different based on the exact type of card it is.
Right. And as you get more expansions, granted, we're just talking about the base game, but as you get more expansions, you get more names for things. Now, granted, I understand they're trying to be thematic, but there is a certain point where it's too thematic because you cannot remember all those things.
Right. Like, for example, items and activities are picked up from the same row. You pay money usually to get the card in front of you, mark whatever you paid. And then you can upgrade your items by buying more stuff. So it might be a collection action. I don't remember what it's called because there's too many words. Or the activities might have you do a better activity by spending an activity action. And it's that kind of thing where they keep just adding more and more jargon to the game where it's not needed.
Yes, it's jargon that's not needed. So basically, you're generally going to be doing an action to either gain a card or activate a card in front of you. And that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, and then later on, when you're at the final stage, it's like, well, it's a dream action, or a reminisce action, or a collector's action, or a community action, or just fill in a name, add in. It's like, well, it's the same thing. Why didn't you just explain it that way? It was like, well, it couldn't because it's stuck with this whole jargon-heavy explanation.
Right. Again, I understand they're trying to reinforce the theme. That just might have been a little too much.
Yes.
Also, speaking of too much, there is so much information on the cards that is really hard to see at a distance. And the reason that's a problem is the board is big with 4 rows of cards. I will have to say, for Will and I, when we're playing, I don't use those 4 rows of the board. I just make a stack of items. I make a stack of jobs, a stack of, what's the other ones? Relationships and projects. And when one of us wants to know what they are, I pick up the stack and fan them out and read them because there's just too much information. There's so many unique cards. In fact, every single card is unique. So it's not like you can be like, oh, this is another whatever card. Well, it's that type, but it's going to be a completely brand new card. So it's going to have different requirements and different costs and different rewards. I'm not complaining about the variety. I'm just saying that for all the information that's out there, you're going to be picking up these cards a lot, and that's just an accessibility issue of being able to see that at a distance. I might at some point get a bunch of card trays, like that hold the cards up vertically and fan them out that way, because then at least I could look at them upright. But even then, at a distance, it's not something you can see because there's too much information.
Well, they'll jumble together.
Right.
If they're next to each other.
Yeah. And then, as we've mentioned, there's a lot of expansion material. So this is a game that can be overwhelming, which is also why we want to do all these videos. We're going to go over all the expansions in their own videos, even all the promo, packs and things to break it down, to hopefully help you enjoy this game if this is a game for you, to help you not be so overwhelmed by it.
Yes. Now, I will say right off the bat, this game will hit you right in the brain.
Yes.
It's not a difficult game.
No.
It's just you have too many choices sort of experience.
Kind of like life.
Kind of like life. And that is going, if you're not an AP player where you don't necessarily suffer a lot of analysis paralysis, this game will teach you that you can be someone who suffers analysis paralysis.
That is true.
Especially in a 2-player game, because if the other person's fast by any stretch of the imagination, your turn is coming back quicker before you're even ready for it.
Yes, that is true. So there is a bit of cognitive challenge to the game.
Yes.
But there's a lot of things the game does right, especially on the accessibility. The icons are distinct. You are not going to get anything mixed up with anything else. Now, grasping the concepts, that's still there. But you're not going to get happiness mixed up with, I can't think of anything else in the game, you know?
Yeah, long-term happiness versus short-term happiness.
Yes.
There's no confusion. Versus stress. That also looks completely different.
Yeah.
Even though those are the ones that work off of various tracks.
Right. And the graphic design is good. This is clean, crisp. They have good contrast between the icons and the backgrounds. And they do a good job of writing things out when things need to be written out versus just trying to rely on iconography completely. So I think there's a lot of information on these cards, but they do a good job of making it not difficult to understand.
Yeah, they also give a lot of markers.
Yes.
So that, well, I need to know where I'm at on this particular project. Well, you have a marker to show you exactly where, and they chose very high contrast markers. In the base game, it's like black cubes,
Right.
and then in the upgraded, it's black arrows.
Yep, definitely. And I think one of the things that, you know, we're trying to look more at different types of accessibility, and one of them is representation. And this is one that I have to give high marks to because it's kind of the point of the game. You are pursuing happiness in life. Well, there's a wide range of, well, people in life, a lot of different cultures and a lot of different experiences. And I think they do a pretty good job. Now, I don't know if they had any cultural consultation on any of this, but in the various content that they have, I feel like they did at least attempt to try to get a representation of different ages, gender, racial background, cultures, especially in a lot of the expansion content. I think they did a really good job with that.
I will say the when it comes to gender, they kind of still stick with more male, female.
True.
They don't go with a blended sort of non-binary.
Some of the expansions do
have more neutral type characters.
Yeah, you're right. I think you have to get to some of the promos or one of the extra packs that actually has, like, with relationships where you can get into a relationship with 2 other people. Or, I mean, you can always choose when you go into a relationship whether that person is male or female, because you can pick either side.
Same abilities.
Same mechanisms, but one's female, one's male.
Yeah.
You're right. The only stuff that is more gender neutral would be some of the promo stuff.
Yeah.
And I do know that there was a card there for where you could get into the card represented 2 people, so you could get into a polyamorous relationship.
Yeah.
So there's still probably room for growth in terms of being more representative.
Yeah.
But I will say...
More than most.
Yes, I guess I put this out. This is more than most people do, especially considering it's a game about experiencing life. You want people to be able to connect with this, and if they don't see themselves in the art and mostly it's the art, but in the experiences, it's hard to connect to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, no hidden information, so you don't have secret hands of cards. Whenever you gain a card, it goes face up in front of you.
You almost kind of need that, though, because there are a number of cards that have to act a certain way, so it's a little bit minutia in the rules, and you kind of need everybody's help to make sure that you're playing it right.
That's true.
Like, for example, if you get into an expansion that, say, has pets. Well, pets are different than other items. You have to buy it at the first level. You can't upgrade it like any other item. It upgrades on its own till it usually dies.
Unless you get it really late in life. And you die.
But you can't then you die, and then it sticks around.
Yes.
But it's making sure you remember these little things.
Yeah.
It really helps to have that open play style of everybody can see everyone else so that everybody can help remind each other of this is how that card plays.
And speaking of which, I know we've been talking about the complexity and other expansions, but I will reinforce that the base game is relatively straightforward.
Yes, it's the most straightforward.
It's the most accessible, obviously, because you need it to play the expansion material. And we'll get into our review as to what we think about it, but it is approachable and accessible just in its base form. Well, again, we'll get to what we think when we get to the review. All right, conclusion then.
All right, for 2 players, would you recommend this?
Yes, I think this is a very enjoyable 2-player game. At least we've been enjoying our many plays of this to work through the expansion content. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was actually intimidated by it simply because of the amount of material we had to get through.
Yeah.
But after playing it, I was like, this isn't so bad.
We were intimidated by the quantity of the material because we had backed this from the beginning and have only played it a few times over the years. And
we've been slightly distracted by a few other games.
Yes, we have quite a few behind us. So the expansions were what was piling up, and then when finally, the big box comes out, we're like, we should probably get through some of this. And I'm glad we did.
Yes.
All right.
Accessibility.
I think so. I think most people are going to be fine with this. It's going to get a little annoying to pick up the cards constantly, but maybe you can find, ways around it to make your little vertical card rows and things like that.
Yes. I do talk about the minutia of certain rules, but they're pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And they bake them in so that they often happen at specific moments and they're clearly defined in the rules. It's just they do have a lot of verbiage.
Right.
So it's more frustrating and like, okay, just get to the point. Just get to the point. I already know the history of all this. Just tell me what my answer is.
Right. The good news is the complexity in the game comes from the cards and the interaction, but what you do on your turn and what you're doing throughout the game is pretty straightforward. You're spending your time to live your life. And that involves spending your time to gain cards that do different things.
Yes.
And that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, again, more complexity than that. But learning how to play the game and what you do is pretty good. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and the changes on mechanism more come into representing the fact that, well, me enjoying my record collection is very different than me going on a trip.
Yep.
Or me doing a hobby project where I build a fort.
Right.
Or something. So that's why those mechanisms differ from thing to thing to thing. Mm-hmm. I just wish they didn't call them all.
Yeah, I know. That's the only thing. Well, you probably will not be learning them all. I mean, you could, but yeah.
All right.
Yes.
So, Sarah, when it came to life, what did you learn?
That life is hard. I mean, this game, and we'll talk about it more in Rolling with Reviews, but this game is 100% on the nose on how life goes. And yes, there can be a lot of fun and a lot of happiness, but oh boy, it can be really hard to manage it all too.
Yeah.
Just like real life. But what about you?
Stress will kill you.
Stress will kill you.
And why would you ever roll with just one when you can be rolling with two? And remember, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach out to us on the various social media platforms at
Rolling with Two. That's TWO. We are on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And on YouTube, please like and subscribe.
And if you have time, check out the other content Nanaman has found for you, because remember, he's rolling with you.